Okay, we're doing part 14 of this book, Best of the West in Art, Movies, Music, and Books by me, Pete Rogers. Okay, we're going to be talking about one quote by Charles Murray from his book Human Accomplishment. Then we're going to primarily talk about Soren Kierkegaard, the Danish Socrates, the great philosopher. Okay, the Murray quote. The second blind spot is a tendency to confuse that which has been achieved with something that inevitably would have been achieved. It's easy to assume that somebody like Aristotle was not so much brilliant as just lucky to be born when he was, and a number of basic truths were going to be figured out early in mankind's intellectual history, and Aristotle just gave voice to them first. If he hadn't done it, maybe someone else would have. But is that really true? Take, for example, the discovery of formal logic, in which Aristotle played a crucial role. Nobody discovered logic that we know of in any of the other civilizations for the next 5 millennia, 5,000 years. Okay? Thinkers in the non-Western world had over 2 millennia after Aristotle to discover logic independently, but they didn't. Okay? 7,000 years and no one else did it. Maybe Aristotle really was smart. Okay? He's probably the smartest guy who lived, him and Isaac Newton. Okay, now it's time for Soren Kierkegaard, one of my favorite philosophers. I label him as the number 2 best male philosopher. Okay, and he talks about what does it take to live a good life. Okay, so here, let me just scroll this up a little bit and we'll get going with Soren Kierkegaard. He said, self-creation is the ultimate task of man. You don't just think your way through a philosophic problem, you feel your way through it. That's true, and you think about it for days, and you wake up in the morning and you have a eureka moment because your unconscious solved it while you were asleep. Possibility means I can. It is convenient to say that possibility turns into actuality, but it's not so easy. There is an intermediate step called anxiety. Anxiety arises from awareness of having a variety of options and not being sure which is best. If man were a beast or an angel, he would not be able to be in anxiety. Since he is both beast and angel, he can be in anxiety. And the greater the anxiety, the greater the man. If we move forward, we have anxiety. But if we do not move forward, we suffer the depression, the pressing down of the soul's purpose. In such a difficult choice, one must choose anxiety. For anxiety is at least the path of personal growth. Depression and conformity is a stagnation and a defeat of life. Too much conformity drains away life. Individuality is like riding a wild stallion. Conformity is like falling asleep on a hay wagon. The person who is right often has to stand alone. To be able to despair is an advantage, for it implies that one has a self. The key factor is whether one is conscious of their despair. Despair is not just a lack of hope. Despair is a failure of development of the self. The most common form of despair is not being who you are, being trapped in a job that you don't want, that doesn't develop you at all, but you need it for the money. And so the question is there something else that pays not as much but enough that you could develop? Especially when you're young, you want jobs that develop you. As you get older, you sort of settle for what's doable and reasonable and practical. But, okay, let's continue with Soren Kierkegaard. Take a chance and you may lose. Take not a chance and you have lost already. To dare to lose one's footing momentarily. To dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself. The biggest danger, that of losing oneself, can pass off in the world quietly, as if it were nothing. Every other loss, to lose an arm, a leg, $5, a wife, is certain to be noticed. The more consciousness, the more intense the despair. But the more consciousness, the closer one is to eradicating the despair and to living a genuine life appropriate for a human being. What I really must get clear is what I am to do, not what I must know, except insofar as knowledge must precede every act. What matters is to find a purpose, to see what it really is that God wills that I shall do. The best news the world has ever heard came from a graveyard. Christ has risen. I am a missionary. I bring Christianity to Christendom. Soren Kierkegaard. Okay, that's great. And I think there was a lot of truth in that. Basically, If you just conform, you end up miserable. You hate your life, you hate yourself eventually. On the other hand, if you try to push yourself and develop, you're going to be scared, you're going to be stressed out quite often. A lot of people are going to be very nasty to you. So you got to kind of pick how far you want to go on that spectrum. And eventually, though, you have to live your life goal-driven based on some purpose if you want to be happy and like yourself. Because there's always pressure to be a weasel. And you have to weasel a little bit on some things just to survive, but you don't want to weasel too much or your life will feel like it was pointless. And you want your life to, have that Christian part of the struggle between good and evil, be part of the good in the world.